My husband's sister took everything while I did nothing. Then I showed the $500,000 truth. They thought I was the quiet one, the weak one, the woman who just paints for fun. She stole my place. He handed it to her. But they forgot I was watching. And the day I opened that folder, everything changed. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of day you expect nothing from. Until everything breaks. Logan came home early. Not with flowers. Not with a kiss. With her. Marissa, his sister. The one who always said I was just playing artist. She stood in my kitchen, wearing my apron, stirring tea like she lived there. And Logan. He didn't even flinch. Just looked at me and said, "Since you're not working, maybe it's time we talk about the house." Like that. Like I didn't exist. Like everything I gave, every year, every breath was a joke. I didn't scream. Didn't cry. I just stared. And in that silence, something sharp cracked inside me. I knew I couldn't change them, but I could show them exactly who I'd become. I met Logan when I was 26. I had just finished my MFA in illustration and moved to a quiet part of Pasadena, hoping to build a small life around art, peace, and lavender tea. He was working in real estate back then, sharp suits, louder charm. I fell for his quiet smiles more than the promises. He seemed like the kind of man who didn't need to be the loudest in the room. Turns out, he just liked women who didn't take up space. We married within a year. His family, especially his sister Marissa, said it was too fast. But Logan defended me. Said I was talented, grounded, gentle. His mother, Helen, wasn't so quick to warm up. At our engagement dinner, she leaned in and asked if I planned on getting a real job after the wedding. I smiled. Told her I had a publishing contract for a children's book series. She blinked. "But do they pay you enough to live?" I remember Logan laughing it off. "Mom, she draws for a living. It's cute." That was the start. They never saw what I did as real work. Not once. And the worst part? I stopped correcting them. In the beginning, I tried. I brought sketchbooks to family brunches. Showed them character designs. Marissa always looked bored, scrolling through her phone while I talked. She was a marketing executive at a beauty startup, sharp, polished, fast-talking. She once said, "It must be so relaxing to live in your little storybook world." Logan said she didn't mean it that way. But he never asked her to stop. After we got married, I set up a small studio in the back of our house. Nothing fancy, just a sunlit room with a worn armchair, a drawing desk, and shelves of paintbrushes and portfolios. I worked long hours. I wrote and illustrated entire worlds. And slowly, they started to sell. My books reached schools, libraries. One series got picked up overseas. I started receiving royalties, steady, reliable, and private. I opened a secondary account. Logan never asked. He just assumed I wasn't earning much. And by then, I had stopped explaining. Why? Because every time I tried to talk about work, someone interrupted. Because every time I mentioned deadlines, Logan would say, "Don't stress, it's not like anyone's depending on your books to survive." Because his mother would ask when I planned to give up the art thing and focus on starting a family. I wanted children. I really did, but we had tried twice. I miscarried both times. Quietly. Alone. The second time, I told Helen, hoping for comfort. She sighed and said, "Maybe it's a sign you should rest from all the coloring." Coloring. That's what she called my work. Marissa didn't help. She moved in with us for a while when she was between apartments. Said it was temporary. That Logan always takes care of his little sister. She'd borrow my clothes, use my studio for her Zoom meetings, invite friends over without asking. Logan told me to be flexible. That family helped family. When I asked when she'd leave, he said I was being ungrateful. When I told him she deleted files off my work computer, he shrugged. She probably didn't know they were important, he said. That night, I stood in the kitchen and realized something chilling. In this house, I was the outsider. In my own marriage, I was the one they'd quietly voted off the island. Logan still slept beside me. But I stopped reaching for him. Marissa still called me Meg, but only when she wanted something. Helen still sent over articles about real women balancing jobs and motherhood. They thought I was soft, passive, decorative. And maybe, for a while, I was. But under the watercolor smiles, something else was growing. Not anger, something colder. A resolve. They had built a whole narrative without me. So I started writing a different one. Quietly. In ink they'd never see coming. It started with a comment over dinner. Logan had just finished a call and sat down, barely glancing at me. Marissa was already seated, wearing my cardigan, laughing over a glass of wine she didn't pour. She turned to him and said, "You know, if you're paying all the bills, Megan could at least handle the laundry better." I found a sock in the freezer again. He laughed. He laughed. I blinked. Looked at them. They weren't joking. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. That night, I stayed up late in the studio. I sketched nothing. Just stared at my desk. My tea went cold. The silence felt louder than any insult. Logan used to say I was sensitive. I used to believe that was a flaw. A few days later, I overheard Marissa on the phone loud, carefree, walking through the hallway like it was her home. "Yeah, it's a sweet deal," she said. "Logan's letting me stay rent-free. Megan doesn't mind. She doesn't do anything all day anyway." I stood behind the door. My hands clenched into fists. My throat burned, but I stayed quiet. That had become my specialty. She moved more things into the guest room that week. Took over the hallway closet. Claimed it made more sense for someone who actually wears heels. My heels, by the way, were now stacked in a cardboard box in the garage. Logan helped her carry the shelves. Said I was being dramatic when I asked if this was still my home. He looked at me like I'd asked something stupid. "Marissa's going through a hard time," he said. "And you just sit here drawing kids and castles. She actually deals with real life." That one hit different. I'd never claimed to be the breadwinner. I'd never thrown numbers at him. But I also never expected to be erased. What really broke me, though, came a week later. I walked into the kitchen after running errands, and there they were, Logan and Marissa, sitting side by side at the dining table, flipping through property listings. My property listings. On my laptop. Marissa looked up and smiled. "We're thinking of redoing the back studio. It's kind of wasted space, don't you think?" Wasted space. That room was mine. My ideas, my stories, my quiet, my healing, and now they were planning to gut it like it meant nothing. I didn't say a word. Not when Logan said, "It'll increase value. Besides, you don't really use it much anymore." Not when Marissa chimed in, "We're just trying to help you upgrade." I nodded, picked up my keys, walked out the front door and sat in the car until the shaking stopped. I'd been polite, accommodating, gentle, but I was done being edited out of my own story. That night, I opened my secondary bank account. Then I opened my copyright contracts. Then the email chain with my literary agent. My eyes scanned numbers, figures, foreign rights, royalties. No more soft edges. No more hoping someone would stand up for me. I may not have shouted, but that was the moment I started sharpening my silence. I didn't go looking for the truth. It came to me, in the most unexpected way. I was in the garage, looking for an old portfolio I needed for an upcoming interview with a publishing rep. Marissa had moved so many boxes around that I could barely find anything. I pulled one stack forward, and a manila folder fell out from behind the shelf. The label on the front read, "Loan Agreement, Holloway Family Trust." I wasn't sure why, but something in me paused. I opened it. My name was on the first page. Not Logan's. Not Helen's. Mine. A $120,000 equity loan, taken out against our house. Co-signed using my name, my signature. Except I never signed it. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Something I forgot. Something I authorized during a flurry of paperwork. But then I saw the date. It was filed during a week I had been out of town, visiting my sister in Seattle. I flipped through the rest of the file. Bank approvals. Emails printed out. One from Logan, CCing Marissa. "Use Megan's name, it'll go through faster. She doesn't need to know." My hands were shaking. They didn't just disregard me. They exploited me. I couldn't breathe. I sat down right there on the cold cement floor. For months, they'd looked me in the eye. Shared dinner. Passed salt. Talked about renovations and helping me, while building a debt under my name. For Marissa's startup. A brand she launched with Helen's backing, Logan's approval, and my collateral. I walked back inside like a ghost. Didn't say a word. That night, I stayed up scanning every account. Every drawer. Every old file. It was all there. Hidden in plain sight. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was legal. Strategic. Paper cut deep. And suddenly, it all made sense. Why they needed the studio. Why Logan laughed when I said, "my house." Why Helen always told me to just focus on art. Because they thought they already owned the rest. I didn't scream. Didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Instead, I printed the loan file. Highlighted everything with my name on it. Labeled it neatly and slid it into a red folder. Red, not because I was angry. Because it was time to stop pretending this wasn't a war. The next morning, I made 2 calls. First, to Helen Rohr, my lawyer. She had helped me with all my publishing contracts over the years. Sharp, unshakable, and not a fan of anyone who underestimated women. Second, to the escrow agent listed on the loan. By noon, I had confirmation. The signature wasn't legally verifiable. And the notary who witnessed it? No longer licensed. Helen was already drafting a motion to challenge the loan and freeze the transfer of any shared property until further notice. Meanwhile, at home, Marisa was rearranging my studio. Logan was booking a contractor. And I was making copies of every document I could find. I started sleeping with my laptop beside me. Passwords changed. Bank accounts monitored. I wasn't scared. I was alert. Every Sunday, I met Daniel, Marissa's ex-husband, under the pretense of dropping off art supplies for Elise. He always brought coffee. I always brought questions. Turns out, Marissa's startup wasn't doing well. The brand she bragged about had racked up over $90,000 in silent debt. And guess who had covered most of the shortfall? Logan. I asked Daniel if he'd known about the loan under my name. He shook his head. But he wasn't surprised. She's done this before, he said quietly. Not at the scale. But twisting people, especially family, that's her talent. We started exchanging notes. Phone records. Emails. We were careful. Detached. We never spoke about revenge. Only clarity. Only truth. I found receipts. Logan had used my credit card to buy Marissa's branding packages. He had paid off her web designer using my publishing account. Quiet, automatic payments. Things I wouldn't notice unless I was watching. But I was watching now. The worst part? The more I looked, the more it became clear. This wasn't impulsive. It was planned. I thought about every time Logan brushed off my work. Every time he told me not to worry about the mortgage or the taxes. Now I understood why. He wanted me distracted. He wanted me small. So I did the opposite. I called my agent, set up meetings, signed 2 new book deals under my LLC, something I had established years ago, in secret, just in case. I moved all future payments to my business account, away from our joint finances. Next, I quietly filed a request to have my name removed from all shared utilities and household contracts. Let them figure that out when the lights went out. Then I met with Helen. We crafted the plan. First, block all attempts to refinance or touch the equity again. Second, place an emergency injunction on any property sale. Third, notify Logan and Marissa, formally, that any use of my intellectual property or identity would result in immediate legal action. When the certified letter arrived at the house, I watched from the kitchen window as Logan opened it. His face shifted. Not panic yet, but the confusion of a man who had no idea his quiet little wife had teeth. He handed it to Marissa. She laughed. She's bluffing, she said. I didn't correct her. Let them think I was still weak. Still soft. The day I filed for separation, I left the papers on his desk beside a copy of Luna and the Hill of Light, the first book that hit the bestseller list. I signed it. To Logan. For underestimating me. Thanks for the material. He never said a word. But that night, he didn't sleep at home. And Marissa spent hours in the studio, pacing, texting, calling people who didn't answer. I had become the silence they feared most, one with a plan. And they didn't even know the second half was still coming. It all came to a head at Helen's birthday dinner. She insisted on hosting it at the house. My house. The one with my name on the deed. The one they thought I'd forget how to claim. They decorated everything in gold and white. Marissa wore a satin dress and walked around like she was queen of the estate. Logan barely looked at me, like I was a seat filler in a movie he'd already seen. Helen raised a glass midway through the meal and said, I'm proud of how far our family has come. Especially Marissa. You've built something beautiful. All of this, it's just the beginning. She turned to me and smiled. And Megan, thank you for being supportive. Not every woman would be so gracious with limited contributions. The room chuckled. I didn't. I reached into my bag and pulled out the red folder. Set it on the table. I'd like to offer a toast too, I said, standing. Logan shifted. Marissa rolled her eyes. I opened the folder. Slid a few pages across the table, copies of the forged loan. The unauthorized transactions. The email from Logan. She doesn't need to know. Then I looked directly at Helen. Happy birthday. You've built quite the empire. Too bad it's funded by fraud. Marissa's face went pale. Logan leaned forward. Megan, this isn't the place. I cut him off. No, Logan. This is exactly the place. The house you thought you could steal. The name you thought was silent. I own this. Legally. Financially. And emotionally. I turned to Helen. The equity loan you signed off on? Invalid. The notary? Disbarred. And any attempt to move funds again? Already frozen. By court order. You could hear a fork drop. Marissa's voice cracked. You can't just show up and humiliate us. I smiled. Didn't need to. You did that all on your own. Logan stood, voice low and strained. This doesn't have to be a fight. I met his eyes. It already was. You just didn't realize I was fighting back. Helen looked stunned, mouth slightly open. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke. Elise wants to say something. Daniel had entered quietly, standing behind our daughter. Elise stepped forward. 15. Small, but steady. She looked at Marissa, then at Logan. I used to wonder who cared about me more. Who I belonged to. But now I see it clearly. She turned to me. The only person who stayed, who loved me through all of this, is Mom, Megan. My breath caught. Marissa whispered, but I'm your mother. No, Elise said, her voice firm. You gave birth to me. But you never raised me. You raised your ambition. Megan raised me. There was silence. Complete. Heavy. The kind that changes the temperature of a room. I placed a hand on Elise's shoulder, nodded at Daniel, then turned back to the table. To answer your toast, Helen. Yes, your family has come far. But so have I. Just in a different direction. Then I walked out. No slamming doors. No screaming. Just the sound of heels on marble. And a chapter quietly closing. The fallout came faster than I expected. 3 days after the dinner, Logan was removed from his position at Holloway Development, his father's firm. Mr. Holloway called me personally. Apologized. Said, I protected him for too long. But this time I won't. By the end of the week, Logan had been reassigned to a coastal property site in Astoria. Manual labor. Construction oversight. He called once. I didn't answer. Marissa's world cracked just as loud. The court moved quickly once Helen Rohr filed the fraud complaint. The equity loan was frozen. Her accounts flagged. Her startup, already shaky, lost its remaining investors within days. She moved out of the house the following week. Left in the rain with 2 duffel bags and a silence that finally suited her. Helen, once so composed, went quiet. She sent a single message. I didn't know it had gone that far. I didn't reply. The house was mine again. Officially. But I didn't want to stay. Too many ghosts in the hallways. Too many echoes in the studio. So I rented a small place by the sea. Just enough space for me and my brushes. And for Elise on the weekends. She visits often now. Sometimes we cook. Sometimes we don't talk at all. We just sit with the windows open, her sketching beside me, both of us breathing easier. Daniel got full custody after the court heard Elise's statement. Marissa's visitation was denied. The judge said, children know who's safe. We just have to listen. I still get letters from Logan. Most go unopened. He writes about missing the life we had. I wonder which part. The love he threw away? Or the money he didn't see coming? But none of it matters now. I didn't ruin their lives. They did that themselves. All I did was reclaim mine. And somehow, in the wreckage, I found something rare. A version of me that no longer asked for permission to matter. And a piece they'll never understand. A month later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a children's book, one of mine. Luna and the Hill of Light. The French edition. Tucked inside was a note. In Elise's handwriting. I'm learning to translate. I want your stories to reach kids everywhere. Even the ones like me, who need a quiet voice to hold on to. I held the book close to my chest. For the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain. From something gentler. Something like healing. That night, as waves brushed against the shore outside my window, I lit a candle and opened a fresh sketchbook. Not to prove anything. Not to fight back. Just to create again. On my terms. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing them to see me. Because I saw myself. And that was enough. They thought I'd disappear quietly. But I became the woman they never imagined. Free. Whole. And finally, unafraid.